A lot of people mistake seduction. They have really bad ideas about it.
If you get people to think about you when they go home, you're halfway towards a seduction.
I'm revealing the secrets that a lot of men use. Falling in love and seducing is creating a wound in the other person. They need you. You're going to fill what they can't get on their own. Probably the most important lesson I tell people in the realm of seduction. The falling in love process generally takes time. There's a famous French writer named Stendhal who wrote a great book called On Love, one of the greatest books written about love. And he compared to falling in love to what he called crystallization. And it's based on this thing where you would throw a piece of wood into this mine in Germany somewhere at Salzburg, and then you would pull it out like a week later and it would be filled with all of these brilliant crystals. And he compared that to the process of falling in love. The person is just who they are. They're like a trunk of a tree. But your mind kind of puts all these qualities on them, crystallizes them into some kind of ideal figure, right? And so that mental process takes time, right? It requires also some distance and some fantasizing. And letting the other person begin to think about you and fantasize about you. And in their mind, sort of imagine some interesting qualities about you and fascinate them, which is what he calls this crystallization process. I mean, literally think of it that way, that you're having you're in their mind, they're kind of forming this sort of ideal crystalled image of you, right? And it takes time and it takes some absence. It takes the ability to say, you know, you're not in their face all the time. You disappear for a couple days, a couple weeks or whatever, not weeks, but a few days. You let them think about you and you let that kind of spell, because seduction and love is kind of a spell that you're casting, right? And there's an art to it. And so the mistake people have is they're in too much of a hurry. In general, in our culture, people are in too much of a hurry. They're too much of a hurry to make money, too much in a hurry to get attention. That also involves, you know, in romantic relationships. I maintain that the process of seducing is making the other person fall in love. Political seduction, marketing seduction, social seductions, because in your office you're continually seducing. It's the same process, and it's getting the other person to think about you and getting them to fall in love with your product, with your idea, with your political platform or whatever it is. And that process of internalizing that other person, of having their presence, their spirit or whatever inside you, inhabit you, and you're thinking about them a lot, is a process of falling in love. So it doesn't mean that there aren't seductions where you're seducing the other person and then it's over after a month, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to lead to a relationship. I separate seduction from just having sex. So if you go to a bar and you pick up a woman in the bar and that night you go back to your place and you have sex, that's not seduction. A lot of people mistake seduction, and that's the reason I wrote the book. They have really bad ideas about it. Well, they have an idea that it's this kind of cold process. Typically, it'll be a male seducer, but it can be a woman, and they're really conniving, and they're coming up with all kinds of tricks, schemes to get the woman or man to like fall for them. And either they're after money or sex or something else, right? And actually seduction is a matter of vulnerability. It's making yourself vulnerable to the other person. And you know, we live in times where people have a hard time being vulnerable. You know, if you're insecure, if you're filled with a lot of anxiety, you tend to close up inside of yourself. And to let another person in and to let them have some control over your emotions can be kind of a scary process. But if you can't feel that vulnerability, if you can't open yourself up to the power of that other person, there won't be a seduction. It'll be this kind of cold, mechanical process. So, you know, we all kind of live in these castles where we're trying to protect ourselves, right? And we're all kind of defensive. And it's for good reason. We live in a world that's very harsh. a lot of information, a lot of things going on at the same time. So we kind of live in these castles, and you're not understanding people unless you can kind of open up to their spirit. I talk about in the Art of Seduction, enter the other person's spirit is one of the key chapters, where you're able to kind of put yourself inside of the other person and feel what they might be thinking, right? Which is, I think, a problem that a lot of men have in dealing with women that they're interested in. Putting yourself in their position, trying to understand what makes them tick, what their psychology is about. To do that, you have to kind of let go of yourself. You have to be willing to kind of float and let yourself go into them,
right,
and open yourself up to their spirit, and not assume that you know everything about them or that all of your ideas are correct. So vulnerability is a very important element that we must have in this world in order to be able to have empathy and to be able to understand people. So the trick in seduction is to have such a gentle touch that people don't even understand what's going on. And that's what a kind of a master seducer can do. So I've known a lot of really great seducers. There was a person in Paris who was sort of the greatest seducer I ever personally met. He was this Brazilian guy in Paris, very tall, very handsome guy. But he was the most brilliant seducer I've ever seen, right? Well, I say it was this kind of openness that he had. And you could call it a vulnerability. It was a kind of a childish, boyish quality. So the women felt comfortable in his presence. He might, dump them in a week and go after someone else. But in that week, he was completely at their feet. He was inside their brain. He understood them deeply. And he was like a boy, who didn't seem threatening at all. Probably the greatest male seducer who ever lived is probably Errol Flynn, the great Irish-American actor. And Errol Flynn supposedly had slept with, like 3,000 women. And the key was, he made women feel so relaxed, right? She said, just being next to him was like drinking 2 martinis. I felt so calm and so relaxed. He had this kind of animal presence where he was very comfortable with himself. Mm-hmm. And that was the thing about that Brazilian man. He wasn't defensive at all. He was very, very comfortable with himself. He wasn't arrogant or grandiose, but he just felt comfortable in his own body and his physicality and in who he was. And I think the problem that a lot of people have is they bring their insecurities into the seduction realm, and it's very anti-seductive. It kind of breaks the spell. Because when you're insecure and you're trying to pick up on a man or a woman, the other person can sense it, right? You're not saying anything, but they read it in your body language, because we're animals that read a lot from nonverbal communication. Mm-hmm. And when another person is insecure like that, it means they're thinking about themselves, right? And it's a very off-putting sense. Like they're more worried about if they say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. And it makes the other person tense and insecure. Probably the most important lesson I tell people in the realm of seduction is to be able to project a degree of confidence and calmness and comfort with yourself are probably the most important qualities.
Seduction is like this other area, this other realm that you enter. It's like you're taking somebody out of their day-to-day life. They work 9 to 5 at a job or wherever it is. And now you're bringing them into this other world where you take them to certain places that are special. You act in a different way. Maybe you dress in a different way. Everything's sort of heightened and dramatic and maybe even slightly theatrical. And you're stirring something that they don't normally get at their job. Most of the time, when you're dealing with people, you never get a sense that they're putting themselves out and trying to think about what your interests are, what your needs are, what you want in life. It's so rare. People are talking at each other. This is what I think, my opinion. This is, and then it's like tennis, back and forth. You never really get the feeling that the person you're talking to is like actually really listening to you and really paying attention and really trying to understand your point of view. If somebody did that to you suddenly in the office or in the realm of a male-female seduction, you would feel it. You would go, wow, that's rare. And you would almost be halfway seduced by just the attention that you could give to someone and show that you're not just sitting there listening to yourself and what you want. That's the kind of thing that insinuation is. It's never something direct. It can be in your body language. It can be in the fact that you appear in your words not to be interested in someone, but your look, your eyes say something different than what your words are saying. Your look is insinuating desire while your words are kind of neutral and blank. It's the art of planting seeds in a person's mind where they go home after they met you and they think, what did he say there? What did he mean? What was that gesture? If you get people to think about you when they go home, you're halfway towards a seduction because your spirit has entered their mind and now they're thinking about what you said, about what you did. So insinuation, planting seeds, saying something that you take back or that is ambiguous is a very key, one of the key elements in seduction. The whole point of the surprise that I talk about in the art of seduction is that people are normally defensive around you. They're in their minds, they're in their heads. When you surprise them, and what could that be? Well, suddenly you take them to a place that they've never been to, literally. You take them to outside the city, to some strange place that you've researched, that you've been to, where it's different people and it's something weird or interesting about it. That moment where they don't know what's going to happen, where they're left waiting, where is he taking me or where is she taking me? Their defensiveness has come down. They're excited, they're wondering, they're anticipating something. In anticipating something, you're having power over them. And so the element of surprise, it can be on many levels. It could be that they discover something new about you that they never realized. They always thought you were this kind of uptight, professorial, intellectual type, and suddenly they discover in your bookshelf some naughty erotic literature and they go, oh my God, he's like nothing pornographic, but just something different. Wow, he's not what I thought he was. Very powerful, seductive elements are working against people's expectations. You know, I compare it to noise and to music. Most of the time when you're in a restaurant and you're talking to people, you're hearing noise. You're hearing blah, 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 blah. This is what I think. This is what I did when I went on this trip. Or when I went on that trip, blah, blah, blah. It's noise and you kind of filter it out. But then there's music. Now music, you don't like listen to the words. There's something else very primitive going on. It's affecting you emotionally, viscerally, physically. A rhythm to it. Even if they're lyrics, it's not the lyrics per se, it's a mood that's created. Well, that's what seductive language is. It's not noise, it's music. That can be where you're talking about the other person and enchanting them and saying, getting inside their spirit. Something what you're just talking about here, where the attention is on them and you're pulling them out and you're getting them to talk about their life. People love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about their childhood. Suddenly, the language that's being interacted is not just, yes, I did this today, yes, I did that. It's like, yeah, when I was 6 years old, I remember I was really blah, blah, blah about my father, etc. It's on a whole other level, the language that's going on between you. This is what you're after. You're not after exchanging banal information. You're after an emotional effect and you're after creating music.
In a kind of a cold seduction, where you're looking at a victim who's got vulnerabilities and insecurities that you can take advantage of. I'm revealing the secrets that a lot of men use. And there are men out there who have a radar for picking on women who have just the right kind of insecurities, just the right kind of vulnerabilities that they can prey upon. And for them, that would make the perfect victim. Seduction depends on the fact that people lack something in their life, right? And you are going to be the one supplying them. They're missing something, okay? The word for love, eros in the erotic, comes from the god who shoots an arrow into someone and wounds them and poisons them, right? So falling in love and seducing is creating a wound in the other person. They need you. You're going to fill what they can't get on their own. So somebody who is completely happy in their life, who's got everything they want, is very hard to seduce. Now, if you're a great seducer, a top-level seducer, you will always find something that people are missing. Nobody is completely happy. Even the very happiest person actually is probably covering up something. And so you'll be able to find that. But the woman who reveals that she's unhappy, that she's got vulnerabilities, that she's been wounded before, and there's something missing in her life, that's like, whew, I can ride right through that. I can be the one to supply. I can be the one to make her happy. They're much easier to seduce.